to today's show. So, obviously, as I stated previously, the headline for today's show is the news that Bill Belichick is officially been snubbed from the Hall of Fame as a first ballot head coach. Again, as I stated a while ago, kind of crazy to think about the idea of Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer head coach. And this is just, and the first reaction, obviously I'm going to pretty much reiterate what a lot of people have said across sports media for the last couple of days, and I'm finally getting my bite of the apple here. But this is a travesty. And I thought about two individuals in another sport. Could you imagine a day where Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr are not going to be Hall of Fame head coaches and first ballot Hall of Fame head coaches? Two out of the top 5 head coaches in the history of the National Basketball Association. Steve Kerr, who knew he was going to be as great of a head coach that he was going to be when he got hired by the Warriors. He was a questionable hire at the time, and he's went on to win multiple NBA Finals. Same with Greg Popovich. He seemed like he was able to do more with less. He didn't have these super talented players. He had Tim Duncan and all those other players, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard, and it's somewhat peaking at it, starting to get to his prime. So he had some good players, but we're talking about two coaches who had key stars and key players across the board. Even a guy like Steve Curry had Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and all those type guys. And we're starting to crucify Bill Belichick for not getting into the Hall of Fame, being a first ballot Hall of Famer, because he played with players, or not even players, but he had the best player and the best quarterback in the history of the NFL in Tom Brady. And a multitude of other players who contributed to the effort of him winning 6 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots. So just because he had the best quarterback in the history of the National Football League, that doesn't give us the right as voters to crucify the man and holding that against him and not allowing him to be a first ballot Hall of Famer like he deserves to be. From what I've researched and from what everybody has said, off the field issues really aren't in huge consideration when it comes to the Hall of Fame. Granted, a couple years ago with T.O., obviously that had a lot to do with the reason why he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. It was because of his off the field antics. But in the committee bylaws, so to speak, it's not in the documents, or however you want to put it, what word you want to use, but it's not in the bylaws that is to be put in consideration when voting for select person in the Hall of Fame, National Football Hall of Fame. Now, in baseball, they put that in consideration because it's in the bylaws, but it's not verbatim in the bylaws in the NFL Hall of Fame that off the field issues is in consideration when you're dealing with who gets elected to the Hall of Fame. Yes, I'm talking about to Deflategate and Spygate, because that is ultimately the reason why everybody, or whoever the voters were, granted, they needed 40 out of 50 votes to be elected as a first round to pass to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And obviously he did not get to 40 votes. He probably got 37, 38, who knows? We don't know the number quite right now, and it's pretty confidential information. Who knows if we will ever know? But that's the reason why. That's the only reason we can come up with that. That's pretty much stuff outside of Bill Belichick's resume. Because what is Bill Belichick's resume? He's won 8 Super Bowls, 6 with the Patriots. He won the other 2 as an assistant coach. He has the most playoff wins in NFL history. He's the catalyst of one of the biggest dynasties in the history of sports. And he helped coach one of the best players in the history of the National Football League in Tom Brady, and a plethora of other players who turned out to have great careers. So just off of Bill Belichick's resume, it's an absolute no-brainer that he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Because if Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, I'm sure guys like Tom Brady are sitting there thinking, wow, am I going to be probably left out of a first ballot? Because the day that Tom Brady is not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, when he's arguably the best player to ever lace up a pair of cleats and throw the pigskin, is not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer because he was part of this. He was part of Spygate. He was part of Deflategate. So if they're going to hold these measurables against Bill Belichick, who knows? They might as well hold it against Tom Brady. This is just absolutely atrocious. And the amount of people who is out here defending this idea, I was a little disappointed in Colin Cowherd pretty much defending the idea. Like, hey, Spygate, Deflategate, you should wait. I'm just paraphrasing what he said, but he pretty much is promoting the idea that Bill Belichick, deserves to wait a year because of the accusations that he had with Spygate and Deflategate. I just don't initially agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. And the person who has been highlighted through this whole issue, and the reason why the committee and those involved are very concerning, and this thing can get pretty messy, because as of last night, the Hall of Fame committee, or whoever their media, their PR person, however you want to put it, they obviously put out a statement yesterday in paper. They are going to go back. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to pretty much go back over the records and go back over the process of the selection pertaining to the Bill Belichick not getting into being a first ballot Hall of Famer. They're going back and making sure nobody violated the bylaws of the selection process, pretty much. Seeing if anybody pretty much had foul play in this. That is something that they released, the Hall of Fame released in a PR statement as of yesterday. So they're looking into this. So we're probably going to get some information in the next couple of days to see what really happened and what really transpired with the whole selection process. Because of this one individual, and this is where it pretty much started all this controversy. Bill Polian. He's been to 5 Super Bowls. He's been a general manager, and he's been, is he been an owner, part owner? I can't quite remember. But I know he's been a GM for a couple teams. Now, he won a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts when he had Peyton Manning, and he's been to Super Bowls with the Bills, having some type of say with the Buffalo Bills. And this guy, as I've researched, he's had a little bit of history with Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick at the time, because the Brady Manning era. So they have their little bit of differences. But this guy, Bill Polian, he was one of the first ones that people in the media really wanted to point out with this situation getting fishy. Because Bill Polian said in the media, his own words, he stated that he didn't even remember who he voted for. And then obviously somebody, I don't know exactly who the source was, went behind him as of yesterday and let everyone know that Bill Polian actually voted for Bill Belichick to get to the Hall of Fame as a first balloter. But he was one of the questioned individuals with this whole situation, and pretty much making us question how legitimate, or how can we legitimize the Hall of Fame going forward. We've already seen previous Hall of Famers like the Deion Sanders. A couple of years ago, he pointed out that it felt like the Hall of Fame isn't as prestigious as it used to be, because it feels like they're putting anybody, verbatim, however you want to say it, they're putting anybody in the Hall of Fame. So how can we legitimize it going forward? I don't know. It's the same thing with the Pro Bowl. Literally, the NFL's had a questionable week this week with the addition of Shedeur Sanders on Monday, making it to the Pro Bowl. And then we have this whole thing here with Bill Belichick not being the first ballot Hall of Famer. This is a bad day for the NFL. This is a bad week for the NFL. Pretty embarrassing that you have a guy in Shedeur Sanders who is going to make the Pro Bowl when he had more interceptions than touchdowns, only played 8 games. And then you have the best head coach, arguably, in the history of the National Football League, not go into the Hall of Fame as a first balloter. It's embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. And it is a travesty, and there's no other way to put it. How can we legitimize the Hall of Fame going forward? It's a question that we need to ask. Because if Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, who knows? There might be a day when Tom Brady won't be a first ballot Hall of Famer. It puts into question It's just embarrassing. There's no other way to put it. Anybody with a right mind would say, without a shadow of a doubt, that Bill Belichick is a first ballot Hall of Famer as a head coach. As much as he's done for the NFL and the accomplishments that he has had in his career. If that resume doesn't warrant a first ballot Hall of Famer, there's plenty of guys. I don't know the approximate number, how many Hall of Famers they have in the Pro Football Hall of Fame right now, but I promise you, if Bill Belichick is not a Hall of Famer, 95, I can probably say confidently, 95 to 96, 97% of the guys in the Pro Football Hall of Fame don't deserve it either. Absolute embarrassment by the NFL.